Hi guys, welcome to Off the Path Learning. Thank you so much for being here with me today. My name is Lisa, and this is Leatherleaf. So I've known about Leatherleaf's existence here in the bog for quite some time. In fact, I've had the privilege to film it on several occasions during the different seasons. But I was under the impression that this plant was toxic, and so I steered clear of it. In fact, I actually made a video on Labrador Tea where I discussed this plant as a toxic lookalike to stay away from. So you can imagine my surprise when I recently discovered that this plant may have a place in our pantries. And according to some, it potentially has a better taste than the coveted Labrador Tea. So I'm here at the tail end of winter to harvest this plant for the first time and see what the tea tastes like. But before we do that, let's go over the information I've learned about this plant. Now, my caution with this plant was warranted. It is in fact poisonous. Now, according to some reports, this plant contains a toxin called andrometotoxin. In high doses, this toxin can cause a lot of damage and can be quite harmful and potentially deadly. It's actually the same toxin that's found in Labrador tea. So I think the generally accepted idea is that you'd have to consume a crazy quantity of this toxin for it to cause any real damage. Just to really bring in that point, I mentioned that Labrador tea has the same toxin, the andrometotoxin, but if you were to buy Labrador tea in a store, I bet you that there'd be no warning on the packaging about that toxin. So being cautious is probably a smart idea, especially when it's your first time interacting with the plant. You should always do your own research and make your own decisions. How one plant affects one person may be completely different than how it affects another. We're all unique, we're all individuals. And of course, if you're taking different medications, that's something to consider. If you decide that you want to go ahead and try this plant, the best is to make an infusion and not a decoction, just like Labrador tea. So they say that the toxin, andrometotoxin, comes out in boiling water, and so the best would actually be to do a cold infusion. You can put leaves in water and let it steep overnight, or you could put your water in the sunlight to do a sun infusion. So just like Labrador tea, this plant is an evergreen, and so you can harvest it year-round, which is really exciting for me. And actually, winter is a great time to get to know this plant, because at this stage, it really lives up to its name, and you could see why the common name is leatherleaf. In the spring, the plant will totally transform. It'll explode with these tiny, white, bell-shaped flowers that give you a hint that this plant is related to blueberries. It's in the heath family. Apparently, some beekeepers like to keep their hives in leatherleaf bogs so that the honey that the bees produce is imparted with a flavor of the leatherleaf blooms. Ducks also like to take cover in these leatherleaf bogs. I've been lucky enough to film a few critters taking refuge in this area over the years. You can see it's quite a prolific grower. In fact, it's one of the first few plants to take over and create these bogs. It thrives in acidic soils and it's shade intolerant. You'll often find it growing near lookalike plants like Labrador tea, Myrica Gale, and sheep laurel. Actually, right next to the plant right here is one of the lookalikes. This is Myrica Gale. So I'm going to go ahead and go into some detail about each of the lookalikes I mentioned. So let's start with this one, Myrica Gale. Now, Myrica Gale is a coveted plant to foragers. It's renowned specifically for its beautiful scent. It has an intoxicating aroma. In fact, here in Quebec, it's often called bois sans bon, which translates to good smelling wood. All parts of Myrica Gale plant smell really, really good, but the fruits especially have a strong aroma, and they're used as a spice in the kitchen. You can also use the leaves to make a tea. So if you mistake Myrica Gale for leatherleaf, there's not a big problem there. You'll probably be happy about your mistake. But the clear way you can differentiate Leatherleaf to Myrica Gale is by looking closely at the leaves. So the leaves of Myrica Gale will have teeth at the tip of the leaf, and you will not see that on Leatherleaf. Alright, next let's look at Labrador Tea. So just like Myrica Gale, Labrador Tea is coveted by foragers, also for its beautiful aroma, although it's more delicate. It's an evergreen just like Leatherleaf, so you can harvest it year-long, even in the winter. And just like Leatherleaf, it has some toxins, so it's something to look into. It should be avoided by pregnant women. It's considered a narcotic, so it's something to be aware of. You really should do your own research on Labrador Tea and make your own decision, but it's an incredible plant that we're really lucky to have. It's a powerful medicinal that can help with seasonal affective disorder, just uplifting your mood. I made a full video on Labrador Tea, and so if you're interested in learning more about that plant, I invite you to go check it out. I actually made 2 videos on Labrador Tea, so I'll link them and you can go check them out if you're interested. But the way to tell Leatherleaf apart from Labrador Tea is that the Labrador Tea leaves will have a fuzzy underside. So if you look at underneath of the Labrador Tea leaf, you'll see an orange fuzz on the underside of the older leaves that can be found at the bottom of the plant. And at the top of that plant, the new leaves will have a white fuzz. Leatherleaf will not have this fuzz, so that's a clear way you can tell the two apart. Okay, now the last lookalike we'll go over is sheep laurel. Unlike the first two, Myrica Gale and Labrador Tea, you do not want to make the mistake of harvesting sheep laurel leaves. The plant is toxic and it really has no reported use, so you should avoid using it. The easiest way to tell the difference between sheep laurel and leatherleaf is from the flowers. So the flowers of sheep laurel are really bright pink, and as we looked at before, the flowers of leatherleaf are these white bell-shaped flowers. But the plants aren't always going to be in flower, and so another key differentiating feature between leatherleaf and sheep laurel is going to be the growth pattern of the leaves. So leatherleaf has an alternate leaf pattern, whereas sheep laurel has opposite leaves or whorled leaves. Also, this growth pattern of having these really small leaves towards the top and the bigger leaves at the bottom, this is also a key feature that differentiates leatherleaf from its lookalikes. So that's it on the leatherleaf plant. Thank you so much for watching. I was really excited about my discovery, and so I wanted to share it with you, but keep in mind that in all of the literature I looked at, my usual references, there were only 2 sources that I found that spoke about using leatherleaf as a tea. These are reputable sources that I trust, but bottom line, when it comes to interacting with a wild plant, the decision is yours. You should make your own decision based on your own research, and you should do what you're comfortable with and what feels right for you. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you on the next one. I wouldn't leave you hanging on the tea. So I brought home my harvest and I made 2 different kinds of infusions. The first was an infusion using room temperature water that I placed in the fridge and let steep overnight. For the second infusion, I used water that was heated to a temperature of about 70 degrees Celsius. So keep in mind, water boils at 100 degrees Celsius, and I let the leaves steep in this warm water for about 45 minutes. I also did a third infusion the following day. I figured I needed maybe to give this tea another shot, and so I harvested from a different area, and this time I used water heated up to 90 degrees Celsius, and I let it steep for about 40 minutes as well. And this was the result. Beautiful color and a very nice, pleasant, mild taste. I'm happy to report that there were no ill effects observed. I was totally fine. So I'm quite surprised by what I discovered, and I'm happy to have this plant under my belt. Alright, take care of yourselves guys, and I'll see you on the next one.